There is a mystery older than time, deeper than the ocean, higher than the heavens. It is the mystery of the Lamb who was slain before the foundation of the world. Not just slain, but chosen, appointed, and offered, and not just for sin, but for you. The sacrifice of Christ is not a mere event in the distant past, not a relic to be admired or a religious ceremony to be repeated. It is not something we look upon from a distance with admiration, reverence, or emotion. It is not something to be analyzed, discussed, or even praised while we remain outside of it. The cross is not a monument to be gazed upon. It is an invitation to step in, to become part of the mystery, to lay down our lives as He laid down His. The sacrifice of Christ was not given so we could observe, applaud, or philosophize. It was given so we could be crucified with Him, that we might live with Him. The tragedy of the modern faith is that many are content to believe about the cross without ever truly coming to it. They wear crosses around their necks, hang them on their walls, etch them into stained glass, but never carry them. They speak of the blood, but their garments remain untouched by it. They speak of the altar, but never climb upon it. They recite prayers, attend services, and sing hymns, but their lives remain unbroken, unburned, untouched by the fire of the sacrifice. Yet the call of the cross has never changed. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. The sacrifice of the Messiah was not simply a substitution, it was an initiation. When He died, it was not only to take our place, but to open a way, a path, a portal into a new life, through death. His cross is the pattern by which we must walk. It was not simply His destiny, it is ours. We are not called to admire His surrender. We are called to imitate it. We are not called to weep over His wounds. We are called to be wounded with Him. Not because He lacked anything in His offering, but because the love that poured itself out on the cross demands a response of equal abandon. And He who gave all calls us to give all in return, not to earn grace, but to enter it. The early believers did not treat the cross as a symbol. They treated it as a sentence. To follow Jesus meant to lose everything: family, home, status, comfort, even life itself. They were crucified with Him in reality, not metaphor. Their lives were joined to His suffering. Their hearts were joined to His agony. And yet, in that death, they found life. In that loss, they found a kingdom. So what does it mean to join your life to the sacrifice of Christ? It means to stop living for yourself. It means your dreams, your will, your reputation, your possessions. They are no longer yours. It means laying everything upon the altar of the Lamb, holding nothing back. It means following wherever He leads, whether to abundance or to lack, to joy or to suffering, to honor or to shame. It means that the cross is no longer just a place where He died. It becomes the place where you die. But in that death comes life, real life. Not the hollow, fading pleasures of this world, but the unshakable joy of eternity. Not the illusion of control, but the freedom of surrender. For what the world calls death, God calls birth. What the world fears, heaven welcomes. When you are crucified with Christ, it is no longer you who live, but Christ who lives in you. And the life you now live, you live by faith in the Son of God, who loved you and gave Himself for you. This is the mystery, that the cross is not just where sin is punished, it is where love is perfected. That sacrifice is not the end, but the beginning, that only when we lose our life do we truly find it. The sacrifice was not meant to be admired, it was meant to be joined. You were never called to stand at the foot of the cross, but to climb it. To take up your own cross and be nailed to it, to be buried in the likeness of His death, so that you may rise in the likeness of his resurrection. And so the voice still calls, the Spirit still beckons, the altar is still open, the blood still flows. The fire has not gone out, but the cross will not come down to you. You must go up to it. You must lay everything down, not some things, not most things, everything. Your life is no longer your own. You were bought with a price. Therefore, glorify God with your body, your breath, your days, your every heartbeat. Stop observing the sacrifice. Start living it. Let your life be poured out as a drink offering. Let your heart be pierced. Let your will be broken. Let your plans be burned. For only what is placed upon the altar can be consumed by the fire. And only what is consumed by the fire can be transformed by heaven. So come to the cross, not to watch, but to die. Not to observe, but to offer. Join your life to the sacrifice, and in losing everything, you will gain eternity. The altar of God is not a token gesture, not a decorative piece in a sanctuary, not an optional accessory to an already comfortable life. It is the place where everything that still clings to self must be laid down and consumed. The ancient fire that fell upon the sacrifices of old was never polite. It never asked permission to burn only the edges or lightly warm what was offered. It engulfed the whole, reducing flesh and bone, sinew and fat to rising smoke. To approach that altar today is to step into the same immovable truth. Partial surrender is no surrender at all. If one corner of the offering is withheld, the flame will expose it, for the holiness of God cannot be negotiated with half measures. We live in an age of selective devotion, faith customized to preference, discipleship edited for convenience. Yet the altar stands untouched by our modern revisions. It remains fierce, alive, unchanging. The voice that once thundered from Sinai still calls, present your bodies as a living sacrifice. Bodies, minds, affections, ambitions. Nothing can remain hidden in a private chamber of the heart. All must be placed upon the wood. Pride must go first, because pride is the great deceiver, whispering that sacrifice can be measured and metered, that surrender can be compartmentalized. Pride invents a faith that requires no loss, a cross without nails, a flame that merely flickers for show. But the true altar requires the surrender of the very pride that resists it. It asks us to confess that we cannot redeem ourselves, cannot manage our own holiness, cannot preserve our own reputations while seeking the honor that comes from God alone. Next comes secret sin, the debris of compromise we've swept into hidden corners. In the gentle light of ordinary days, such shadows seem harmless, but under the blaze of the altar, they are revealed as shackles that bind us to lesser loves. The flame does not shame us by exposure. It frees us by consumption. To let sin burn is to feel chains melt away, to watch the false security of secrecy dissolve into the radiant freedom of honesty. The altar is a furnace of liberation, and every ember that once enslaved us is turned to ash beneath the relentless affection of heaven. Then comfort must be laid down, for comfort is the subtle tyrant that persuades us life should feel safe and predictable. The God who calls people to follow pillars of cloud and fire, to cross seas on dry ground, to walk upon waves, to preach in hostile courts. This God has never trafficked in the currency of ease. Comfort resists pilgrimage. It builds tents on transient mountaintops and calls them permanent dwellings. But the altar demands a pilgrimage of soul, a detachment from cushions that deafen us to the stirrings of divine adventure. To burn comfort is to awaken to a life no longer governed by the timid question, is it safe? but by the daring question, is it God? Desire itself must be offered, not only the twisted desires that lead to obvious ruin, but the noblest hopes, the brightest dreams, the visions wrapped in spiritual language. Many of the patriarchs watched their God-given promises ascend in flames before they descended in true fulfillment. Abraham built an altar for Isaac long before the knife was stayed. The willingness to lose the promise was the very pathway to receive it anew. Until our dearest aspirations are relinquished, they remain at risk of becoming idols, demanding allegiance equal to or greater than the one who granted them. When desire is burned, it rises again refined, purified from ego, aligned with the heartbeat of God rather than the applause of man. Some ask, will anything be left if everything is given up? That question misunderstands the arithmetic of the kingdom. What is consumed in holy fire is what could never bring life. What remains is what could never be destroyed. The altar does not diminish the worshiper. It unveils the worshiper's truest identity. A kernel of wheat must fall and die before it multiplies. So the self laid down in sacrifice returns resurrected, liberated from the chaff of self-preservation. The very act of losing one's life for the sake of Christ becomes the miracle of finding it. Yet this is not a single, dramatic moment to recall with nostalgia. The altar requires everything today, and tomorrow it will require everything again. Each dawn presents a fresh summons. Place your thoughts, words, and deeds upon the wood. Refuse to snatch back what yesterday you promised to surrender. Mercies are new every morning because sacrifices must be new every morning. What seemed fully offered yesterday is often found crawling off the altar by nightfall, insisting upon its right to live. The life joined to Christ answers with a gentle but unyielding resolve. Back to the altar, back to the flame, back to the place where nothing is held in reserve. And still the fire welcomes us. It is the fire of love, not condemnation. The fire that once blazed between cherubim above the mercy seat. The fire that danced as tongues upon the heads of trembling disciples. The fire that baptizes hearts, so they carry heaven's fragrance into earth's despair. The altar's demand for everything is matched only by the fire's promise to give everything in return. Holiness, peace, power, unbreakable joy, these rise like incense from a life fully surrendered. The one who calls for all is the one who gave all. His wounds testify that he placed himself upon the supreme altar first. Our sacrifice is but the echo of his. Our fire is kindled by his flame. So stand before the altar with nothing in your hands but the willingness to lose them. Let the wood be stacked with every entitlement, every preference, every plan. Let the spark of heaven ignite what earth cannot keep. And as the smoke ascends, breathe in the strange, exhilarating freedom of utter surrender. For when the altar has claimed everything that is less than life, the God of resurrection will give back everything that is truly life, and no power on earth can ever take it away. There is a paradox at the core of the gospel that defies every instinct of the human heart. The only way to truly live is first to die. That declaration cuts against the grain of our self-preservation reflex, our culture of self-promotion, our spiritual impulse to improve rather than surrender. Yet the cross does not offer improvement. It demands execution. It insists that the life built on self, no matter how polished, disciplined, or admired, must be carried to Calvary, nailed through, and left to breathe its last beneath a darkening sky. Only then can resurrection dawn. When the Scriptures speak of dying with Christ, they do not describe a poetic feeling or a seasonal slump. They speak of a decisive, irreversible letting go of the old nature. It is the moment when we stop negotiating with God about what may live and what must die. The idol of reputation, death. The ache for applause, death. The need to control outcomes, vindicate ourselves, clutch the steering wheel, death. We walk willingly into a tomb and let the stone be rolled shut behind us, trusting that the one who holds the keys of death and Hades will open it from the other side in his timing. To die to self is not passive resignation. It is an intentional act of warfare against the tyranny of the flesh. The flesh whispers, "Save your life," but in saving it, we forfeit the very life we crave. The Spirit whispers, "Lose your life," and in losing it, we inherit rivers of living water. Every surrender is a swing of the sword, cutting loose the cords that bind us to the old Adam. Each confession of weakness, each secret sin dragged into light, each act of costly obedience is another nail driven through the false self. And though the cross is agony to the ego, it is liberty to the soul. Yet death to self is not an isolated event. It is a daily rhythm, as relentless as sunrise. Paul said, "I die daily," because every sunrise awakens new opportunities to reclaim the throne. Pride resurrects quickly. Fear rises with the morning fog. Desire for comfort grows back like stubborn weeds. So we carry the cross into the mundane, into conversations that tempt us to exaggerate, into meetings that flatter our status, into thoughts that nurture resentment. The willingness to die is tested not only in dramatic moments, but in 10,000 small choices where we silently choose the cross over the crown. Some fear that if they yield wholly to Christ, they will become lifeless shadows, drained of color and passion. Nothing could be further from the truth. The old self is a wax figure of life, animated by shallow breaths of vanity and appetite. The risen life is wind-filled, flame-lit, ocean-deep. When resurrection power floods what was surrendered, personality is not erased but reborn. Joy grows fierce, love grows muscular, peace becomes unshakable. The passions God planted at creation ignite with holy purpose, freed from the gravitational pull of selfish ambition. It is not that our individuality dies. It is rescued from distortion and made radiant with the glory of God. Consider a kernel of wheat nestled in the soil. It bears in its husk the potential of a harvest, but only if it cracks open, only if its current form ceases to exist. Left intact, it remains a lonely seed. Broken in the earth, it multiplies. So too, the self-life, preserved, remains isolated, ultimately fruitless. Surrendered, it becomes the birthplace of abundance. The grain never mourns its shell when the green blade pushes up toward the sun. Neither do those who truly die with Christ regret the loss when they taste the sweetness of resurrection fruit. True death to self is marked by a holy indifference to anything that competes with Christ's supremacy. Criticism or praise, obscurity or influence, scarcity or plenty. The soul anchored in the cross can thrive in every circumstance because its life supply flows from a realm untouchable by circumstance. Paul, writing from a Roman cell, sang hymns and spoke of unsearchable riches. Chains could not bind resurrection life. Likewise, when we reckon ourselves dead to sin and alive to God, the external loses power to define the internal. Storms may rage, but the tomb is empty. He lives in us and we in him. Yet the call to die is not masochism. It is love's invitation. Christ went first. He chose a crown of thorns so we could inherit a crown of life. He was pierced so our hearts could beat anew. He descended into death so death could be robbed of its sting. When we follow, we enter into a fellowship deeper than knowledge, a union beyond emotion. We are folded into his narrative, grafted into the vine, seated in heavenly places, even while our feet still brush the dust of earth. Our crucifixion with him secures our inclusion in every triumph he has won. Therefore, embrace the cross not as a relic, but as a doorway. Step through, though the passage is dark and narrow, for on the other side blazes the sunrise of indestructible life. Let the final breath of self become the first gasp of freedom. Let surrender become victory, weakness become strength, loss become incomparable gain. For in this sacred exchange, the grave of the old becomes the womb of the new, and the life you live from that moment on will carry the fragrance of eternity into every corner of time. You were never meant to walk your own path, write your own story, or build your own kingdom. The life you were given was never designed to be lived independently from the one who created it. From the very beginning, before the foundations of the earth were laid, you were destined for something more, something eternal. You were meant to be grafted into the story of the Lamb, not as a bystander, not as a casual believer watching from the edges, but as a branch abiding in the vine, sharing in his life, his suffering, his death, and his resurrection. This is the mystery of the gospel, that you were not just saved by him, but into him. The modern version of Christianity often reverses this divine order. It teaches us to invite Christ into our lives, to fit him into our schedules, our dreams, our ambitions, as though he were an accessory to bless our plans. But Christ did not come to be added to your life. He came to be your life. You were not meant to invite him into your story. You were meant to surrender your story entirely into his. You were created to be grafted into a greater vine, a living root that stretches from eternity past to eternity future, anchored in the sacrifice of the Son. When a branch is grafted into a tree, it does not keep its former identity. It draws life from the tree. Its fruit is no longer its own. It is transformed by the life of another, so it must be with you. The life of Christ, the one who was crushed, bruised, pierced, and resurrected, is not something you simply believe in from afar. It is a life you are called to step into fully. His wounds become your healing. His death becomes your death. His rising becomes your rising. His story becomes your identity. You cannot be grafted without being cut. There is no merging with Christ that does not first require the severing of what once defined you. Your pride, your independence, your sin, your reputation, your plans, your dreams, even the image you carefully built for yourself. All must be laid down, because what is not surrendered cannot be grafted. The knife of surrender is not cruel. It is the hand of mercy. It does not destroy. It prepares. It removes what is dead, so that what is living may take hold. To be grafted into Christ's story is to become part of his mission. It means you no longer live for comfort, ease, or safety. You live for the glory of the one who died and rose again. You walk where he walked. You speak what he spoke. You love as he loved. You suffer what he suffered. You die to what he died to. It means carrying your cross, not as a burden, but as a mark of belonging. It means that your life is no longer your own. You were bought with a price, and that price was blood. Many want the resurrection life without the crucifixion. They want the victory without the surrender, the crown without the cross, the joy without the suffering. But there is no resurrection unless there is first death. You cannot rise with Christ unless you first die with him. You must go where he went, to the garden, to the trial, to the scourging post, to the hill, to the tomb. And when you go there, when you lay down your life in the likeness of his death, you are raised in the likeness of his glory. To be grafted into his story means your life now flows with his spirit. It means the old things have passed away, and all things have become new. It means you no longer strive in your own strength, because the life you live is not your own. It is his life through you. You become his hands, his voice, his light, his witness. You are no longer bound to the patterns of this world because you are no longer of this world. You live for eternity. You speak with the language of heaven. You walk with the authority of the cross. When you are grafted into Christ's sacrifice, you become part of a divine lineage, an unbroken line of faith that stretches back through the prophets, the apostles, the martyrs, and the saints who laid down everything for the sake of the Lamb. You walk in their footsteps not because you are worthy, but because you have been called. Your life is no longer small or insignificant. It carries eternal weight. Every moment, every choice, every act of obedience becomes part of the great unfolding of God's redemptive plan. And yet, this grafting is not a one-time event. It is a daily decision. You must choose every day to remain in the vine. You must choose every day to crucify the old nature. You must choose every day to say, "Not my will, but yours be done." It is in this daily surrender that the life of Christ flows most fully. It is here that you are transformed. It is here that your true identity is revealed. This is not religion. This is not routine. This is not ritual. This is life resurrected, redeemed, reborn. You are not merely a follower of Christ. You are joined to Him. His blood flows through your veins. His Spirit breathes in your lungs. His mission burns in your heart. You are not just saved by His sacrifice. You are grafted into it. And in that grafting, you find your purpose, your power, your peace, and your eternal destiny. The invitation did not fade with the passing of the apostles. It was not buried beneath the ruins of Jerusalem, or confined to the upper room where fire fell upon the early church. It still stands. It still calls. The voice that summoned fishermen from their nets, tax collectors from their booths, and persecutors from their warpaths now calls to you. It calls not through thunder or lightning, but with the quiet urgency that moves the soul. Come, follow me. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is not a religious slogan. It is the demand of heaven for the surrender of your life, not part of it, not some of it, but all. This invitation is not for the righteous, the ready, or the qualified. It is for the broken, the weary, the burdened, the sinner who knows they cannot fix themselves. It is not the call to be religious. It is not the call to perform rituals or adhere to external rules. It is the call to die and live again, to be crucified with Christ, so that it is no longer you who live, but Christ who lives in you. It is the invitation to exchange your story for His, your weakness for His strength, your ashes for His beauty, your pain for His purpose. The call is not to improvement, but to transformation, not to add Christ to your life, but to lay your life upon the altar and let Him raise it up brand new. The cross is not just a place of suffering. It is the only path to true life. And yet the invitation to the cross is resisted by many, even within the church. Why? Because it costs everything. It demands that we let go of what we think we must keep. Our identity, our status, our pride, our plans, our dreams, and even our opinions about what is right for us. The cross doesn't bend to your desires. It breaks them. It doesn't negotiate. It ends one life so another can begin. It doesn't ask for a sacrifice. It is the sacrifice. It is the holy collision between death and life. And only one can remain. When Jesus said, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily and follow me," He was not speaking symbolically. He meant it. He wasn't inviting us to be admirers, but imitators. The cross wasn't just for Him. It is for you, not as punishment, but as the door to resurrection. There is no true transformation without the cross. No revival, no breakthrough, no eternal reward without first passing through death to self. This is the great offense of the gospel, that life can only be found through surrender. But the cross is not where the story ends. The invitation is not to die and be left in the grave. The cross leads to the empty tomb. What is crucified with Christ is raised in power. What is surrendered to him is returned in glory. What is given up for his name is never lost, but multiplied in eternity. This is the paradox of the kingdom. The more you lose, the more you gain. The more you die, the more alive you become. The more you surrender, the freer you are. The cross is not the end of life. It is the beginning of life that cannot be shaken. So why do we resist it? Why do we hesitate? Because the voice of the world whispers that the cross is too heavy, that surrender is too hard, that obedience is too costly. But what it does not tell you is the cost of refusing it. To cling to your life is to lose it. To build your house on sand is to guarantee its collapse. To seek your own glory is to fade with time. But to lose your life for his sake is to step into a kingdom that cannot be moved. To build on a rock that cannot be shaken. To wear a crown that does not perish. Refusing the cross may feel easier now, but it leads to ruin later. Embracing the cross may feel like death now, but it leads to glory that never ends. This is why the invitation still stands, because God's love is relentless, because he is not willing that any should perish. Because even now, even in your fear, in your failure, in your wandering, the call of the cross reaches for you. He is not looking for the perfect, but the willing, not for those who have all the answers, but for those who will say yes. It is not about what you've done, but what he did. Not about who you've been, but who he is. The cross has room for the thief, the prodigal, the rebel, the broken, and yes, for you. You cannot stand at the foot of the cross and remain unchanged. The blood that was shed there still speaks. It still redeems. It still cleanses. It still calls. Will you answer? Will you take up your cross? Not as a burden, but as a mark of freedom. Will you lay down your will and step into his? Will you die so that you might truly live? The invitation stands not as a gentle suggestion, but as a divine summons. Heaven still calls, come and die that you may live. The nail, scarred hands are still extended. The voice that stilled the storm still whispers, follow me. The door is open. The way has been made. The invitation remains, and the decision is now yours.